Hey everyone, Phobos here, coming at you with another last Epoch build guide, and this time it's going to be for the Avalanche Shaman. And Shaman is like a subclass of the Primalist, which is like one of the main 5 classes. There's only 4 of them in the game right now, but there will be 5. So, currently this character is the number 1 Shaman on the ladder. Let me pull up the ladder here. So, softcore, which is pretty much what most people are playing, so everybody's testing stuff right now, obviously. You can see we don't get any shamans here until Totem Gang 254. Totem Gang. So, wave 254. It can definitely go higher. It was kind of like a fuck up. I can post the actual death at 254 on the channel, but let's get into the build a bit. So, I think we're going to talk about the skills first. Avalanche is our main skill. We're playing it channel form because we're trying to take advantage of the armor and protections while channeling stats on gear. If you're going to play it channeled, you need precision, because otherwise you just can't really, you don't have the precision to control it, and it's going to feel really bad because you can't really hit things close to you especially, and you also need to be able to hit things far away to make this work. So definitely want to take precision. I have to take this on the way, obviously. In terms of rockfall and frost, it's just a toss-up in terms of like what you have idols for. I think optimally rockfall is better because stun, in my opinion, is better than freeze in this game. Freeze seems to be very bad. It's just like the threshold you need to actually inflict freeze in a mob seems to be incredibly high, whereas stun seems to be a lot more forgiving in that regard. And then on top of that, you can get physical leech from the druid tree, and there's no way to get really natural cold leech from any of the trees, which means that you have to get cold leech on gear, and you want to preserve your gear slots as much as possible because you can get way more damage on them than just spending a couple points in the skill tree to pick up a little bit of leech, right? So I think rockfall is optimal, but just the way that my gear happened to turn out, I have a ton of elemental rolls, so that's why we are going frost. And if you were to go rockfall, I would basically remove this point probably entirely, and I'm not even sure if I would keep these points. I'd have to see. Most likely would. But if you're doing the cold one, which might be more accessible, because I feel like elemental damage is just more plentiful, it seems like, on gear and stuff like that, then this is the build that I would go. So you want, like I said, you need precision, just getting this for extra damage. You want this because it feels pretty awkward without that fall speed. And then Stormfront, so the boulders, like what it means by boulders is actually just like the stuff casting from the sky, right? And it's not like it's 1-to-1 where like every second it's casting a boulder or something like that. So this actually just increases your throughput, right? Because it just increases the rate at which boulders are generated and then dropped. These 2 nodes were the main points of contention. It was like, this build doesn't really get much crit. It has 5% base crit. When you use Frenzy Totem, you have 18% crit, but you don't have a lot of crit to start off with. So you're kind of like, is this worth it? And the reality is there's not a ton of other damage stuff on this tree, really. And the reason why it was a kind of a debate between do we max this out or do we put all 4 points in here is because with Mountain's Fury, the idea is that if your boulder impact area is larger, you're going to get collaterals on certain types of mobs, right? So like more impacts are going to hit the same mob. But what I ended up finding out is that like the trash dies super easily to almost any boulder. So collaterals on the trash don't really matter at all. And in terms of on like a boss type mob or a rare type mob, most of them are so big that without any points in this, or I guess even the 1 of 4 I have here, I'm not really noticing boulders not hitting them, right? So they're pretty much seem to be getting hit by all the boulders anyway. So there doesn't seem to be much point in maxing this out, really. It just kind of seems like a waste. So that's why I ended up going with this. As soon as I put the points into here, I immediately noticed a huge DPS increase, because one of the big problems with this build initially was it didn't seem like we were going to be able to get the damage we needed to really push reasonably high at all in the arena. So once we did this, we made a few other tweaks. It worked out pretty well. So Frenzy Totem, this is going to be kind of the thing that is really adds a lot of damage to your build. So you mainly want to come down here and get Dig In, which is the Tether. Tether gives you 125% increased damage. It's kind of retarded. And then you can get 250% increased crit from this node while tethered as well. And then this node increases the tether range, right? So if I put that down, you'll see it's actually fucking huge with that tether range. And as long as you're in here, you're getting the crit and you're getting the damage. Now, let's go back into the skill here. So initially, I also went to get Healing Pulse, because if you notice, it says you have a chance to cast a Terra's Blessing, and if you go into the Terra's Blessing tree, which we'll go into in a second, you get all sorts of bonuses from casting that. Now the problem is that, as it turns out, for some reason, when it's cast with this particular setup, it doesn't actually give you the bonuses. I'm not entirely sure why, but that's just how it works right now. And I tested that because I casted a Terra's Blessing on myself with this node allocated live stream, where it gives you the spell leech, and I could see the spell leech showing up in the tree under the defensive stats. And then I let it cast with the Frenzy Totem being out and it casting the Terra's Blessing, or, well, it's not that it cast the Terra's Blessing, you're supposed to be casting it, but for some reason you still don't get the buff. As long as you're in range of the totem is what it is, you auto-cast it. But when it happens that way, you don't get the spell leech. So I'm assuming the other effects don't proc as well. So it's just kind of unfortunate. If that gets fixed in the future, probably make another video talking about what you should do in terms of speccing points, but it would basically probably involve removing some things from the reach here, probably removing 1 point from the crit, and trying to get some points in this, because it would be pretty good at that point. And then the last node, basically, you want to max this out because the duration's amazing, obviously. You don't have to put it down as much. And then the reason why you get Sloth Totem here is because you don't benefit at all from Frenzy, because unlike in a game like PoE, getting additional cast speed does not increase like the tick rate of your channel. So it doesn't increase like the rate at which the damage is being dealt inside the channel at all. It doesn't do anything for you. So there's really no need to have Frenzy. You're using it for the other effects, this totem, basically. And this gives you a slow, which is super useful. Slow might not seem like it's really that useful, but the thing with the slow is that what you don't want in this game, or for this build in particular, is things dying on top of you. Really, because some things, when they die on top of you, like the Void Scorpions, they'll leave those void like spires on the ground that deal tons of damage. Or they'll things that'll be drop poison on death, etc. So if you can kill things before they get right on top of you, you don't really have to move as much, which is pretty much the point of this build, is just stand there and turret. Companion, you want to use a Spriggan. Why do you want to use a companion? So because if you go into the Druid tree, you see we have Strength and Bond here, 50% armor protections. You're pretty much speccing into Druid literally to get this. It's huge. And why do you want a Spriggan? So it originally started with a wolf, Then we moved on to a bear, and then we ended up in a Spriggan. And the wolf kind of gives you damage when it kills stuff. Doesn't kill stuff that often, though, so it's not really that good or reliable. And it's weaker in terms of tankiness to the bear. The bear is a bit tankier than the wolf, and in some senses tankier than the Spriggan. But it doesn't really... it's supposed to generate claw totems for you, I believe, when it kills things. But it doesn't really kill things ever because it does like no damage because you're not really spec'd into it, right? Like you're not... This isn't a companion build, so pretty much does like no damage and you'll never get those totems. And the problem is it ints everywhere, so when you have a bear, it'll just like run into any enemy that it sees, and you can command it back with the A key. As you can see, I can control where my Spriggan goes, kind of. But it literally immediately starts walking back into the enemy as soon as you pull it back. So it's just kind of very tedious. And at some point, it's going to get loose and die somewhere. And you don't want to have to move a lot with this build, is the idea. So chasing down your dead bear is not super good. The Spriggan pretty much stays on you all the time because it's ranged. So it just ranged attacks things. And when it dies, you can just stand right on top of it and revive it. And the cool thing is the buff that you get from the druid tree is actually still active while the pet is reviving. So even if it's downed, it actually doesn't go away until the pet is completely removed off the map. So definitely want to use the Spriggan just for that purpose alone. And the reason why we invest in the Spriggan is mainly for this node. Where is it? Oh, so yeah, this node right here increases the damage when its aura is active. And you can either auto-cast the aura, or you can have it, you can choose when to cast it. It doesn't really matter, to be honest. Personally, I would remove these 3 points. I think I'm going to do that in the future. And put them into lasting roots. Lasting roots is just from this Biomancer node, which allows the Spriggan to actually cast entangling roots. It's not like super useful or reliable, I would say, but it's just a bit of nice added contingency against some mobs. And other than that, we get some health here. We get Summoner just to add a couple, vines to take threat off of you or your companions or the totems, basically. Just kind of like more bodies in the arena. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So I would probably remove these, put them into the longer lasting thing. To be fair, you could definitely, if you really wanted to spec like into another skill, you could not specialize the Spriggan and just use it as a summon. And it would still be pretty much fine. The problem is that you're going to need it on your bar anyway, because if you try and summon it and then remove it from your bar, it's actually going to disappear. So it's going to take up a slot regardless. So unless you have something where you can max out its tree and you don't need to have it on your bar because it's essentially being auto-cast or something like that, that would be fine. But otherwise, you might as well just invest into this because it's going to be on your bar anyway. So that's the Spriggan. And then this is the Thorn Tome. So this is like kind of like the bread and butter of the build. Found this by accident, basically, because I had one of these 10% chance on hit to summon a Thorn Totems, which is pretty much required idle for this build. Because when you hit something with that, and you have Grove Mind, and you have Forested Expanse max, so you have 5 totems in total. When you hit something and proc the 10% chance to summon a Thorn Totem, it actually summons all 5 at once. And when you're hitting multiple things, or just with the speed Avalanche hits, you're constantly resummoning 5 totems. And you can't go over 5 totems, but you never really have to worry about the duration, especially with a bit of improved duration from this. Unfortunately, it's not really worth it to spec into their damage, because it's pretty dog shit, I would say. But, yeah. And the other thing is, you don't need any mana efficiency or anything like that or have to worry about the mana efficiency because it doesn't come out of your mana when they're summoned. So you're pretty much just using these totems to buff your damage, which I'll show you on the tree in a second. And you'll have 5 of these and 1 frenzy totem pretty much active all the time, and likely even a couple of these healing totems, which I'll show you in this tree right now. So this is the Terra's Blessing tree, and the main thing you're coming for in here is Soul Bond, 100% increased spell damage to both you and your pet, or your Spriggan. And you get that by just basically casting the blessing on the Spriggan. You can see it kind of gets big. And you deal more damage. Pretty good. You're also summoning totems whenever you're healing something that's at close to full life. Which is good because totems is more damage basically. And then you have this note Encourage, which is really interesting because let's say I use the Rejuvenating Wind, which is the aura for the Spriggan, right? If I heal him, it immediately resets the cooldown. So I can keep spamming the healing / damage aura of the Spriggan almost indefinitely. And you can have that on autocast if you want, actually. Now the problem is you can't actually cast that while you're channeling. As you can see, I'm trying to click with my button onto the Spriggan, and you have to stop the channel first, but I mean, it's still pretty useful. The, like, rotation, so to speak, for this is really rudimentary, but you're basically going to drop your totem, your tether totem, and then heal your Spriggan, and then just start doing damage. And then if everything dies, you just kind of like rinse and repeat. Drop your totem to refresh it, heal your Spriggan, and channel until everything's so dead and the next wave comes. So that's how you can kind of take advantage of the damage buffs there. This node, very interesting. Seems like it would be super good, but I tested it a ton on the dummy, and I don't think it works with channeled spells. Let's just put it like that. So that's kind of out for now. And this isn't really that bad, but I already have way more than enough leech. And it's just kind of a lot of points to get there, right? So this seems to be kind of bugged where it's always healing me. So I'd be careful, like using this. Definitely try it out, test it for yourself first. But yeah, the main things are Encourage and Soul Bond from this tree for sure. And Binding Heal never hurts, because if you heal your Spriggan, it heals you a bit as well. You can also put a point in Tranquil Spirit if you're the type that's going a lot. That'll help you just heal up in a pinch when you don't have any potions, right, like that. So that being said, let's go into the talent trees. So again, this is the Druid Strengthened Bond, why we come here. And then the rest is pretty self-explanatory on the bottom with the 8 and 10. And this is the node that has the physical leech. So assuming you are doing a physical-based version of this build where you get Rockfall, you want to be putting probably at least like 2 to 4 points into this, depending on how much leech you have in other places on the tree. I would say like leaning on this heavily is better than getting leech rolls in your gear. So you're only going to want to skimp on points in this if you just happened to roll a lot of leech rolls in your gear, because those leech rolls are technically better off as some other type of stat, almost in every case. So just keep that in mind. In this case, you would probably, well, if you were going physical, yeah, you'd basically take points out of these and put points into these two. You'd probably finish this off and put a couple points in here. And then make sure, obviously, you're grabbing the 5 out of 5 and Strengthened Bond. In terms of Beastmaster, we have to do 15 points to get Frenzy Totem, which is huge. Beastmaster also has Boarheart, which is just retarded. It's crazy good. 15% damage reduction, pretty much up all the time. It's pretty self-explanatory. And then the last point I put in is in Call to Pack, just for some extra health. I take this just because it makes it easier to see your companion, and it gives your companion a little bit more damage, might help it kill some rares or something, but you can put that point in here if you want, or wherever, really, doesn't actually matter. Just trying to get to 15 there. The Primalist, pretty self-explanatory again. This is kind of like a thing where you just might as well get the Totems are immune to poison, because poison is probably going to be the thing that's going to kill them quickly and the most. I get this just because it's only 1 point and increases your companion's health by 15%. That's really good point for point. And then the revival speed is also nice. And then I just take, as you can see here, pretty much normal stuff. And Shaman. So this is the one we're spec'd into, and because of that we get the double protections while you have a totem out. And mainly this build is built around Ascendant Circle. And the idea is you get a ton of totems out, anywhere between 5 to 7, and you're getting 40% spell damage per totem, which is pretty nutty. And then Protective Circle is kind of like the same thing, but for defenses, where you're getting, once this is maxed out, 50 protection points to everything per totem. So pretty crazy. I'm obviously cold, so I'm getting the cold damage. You wouldn't be getting this if you were physical. And one thing is I would take points out of this in the late game and put them in here, because this is basically just like a better version of this node. You want to get the adaptive spell damage and the percent armor right here. Yeah, and that's pretty much it, I would say. That's the talent trees. And let's go into the gear, the last part. So the gear is kind of expensive, but you can make do with other items. Oriana's Eye, obviously really good mitigation tool, because you don't have to worry about void at all, and it doubles your fire protection basically, and giving you less damage over time taken, which is super helpful versus poison, which is a big weakness for this build. High mana roll on this is good if you can, because the build is sort of mana hungry. We'll talk about that in a second. Sunforged Great Helm. So this is really good just in terms of like helping out with the poison again. And necrotic is nice too, because you're going to have way more fire resistance than necrotic resistance with this build. There's just no way that it's ever going to be different than that unless you do some very weird gearing. So super helpful. The weapon, so ideally you'd want like neutral damage stats, like damage while channeling and spell damage. Obviously we didn't get that here, but still a pretty good staff. Mana regeneration you don't need. This is like tier 5 I think, but it's really more of like a tier 4 roll because it's the bottom of tier 5. So you could get away with a tier 3 here and be just fine, possibly even lower, like a tier 2. I would max that last when you're doing crafting. I would max whatever primary damage stat you have first. If you have elemental damage, I might even leave it at like tier 4. And then I would bump up armor and protections as high as they'd go. Because that is going to make a huge difference. The tier 5 on this is so much better than the tier 4. And it's very noticeable. It's like an extra probably 200 and some base protection, or at least like 100 and some. So it's very strong. And that's pretty much what you want in your weapon. The stats on this weapon are perfect. It's just like the rolls and the types of damage are not, right? So, but this is what you want. You want mana regeneration, armor protection while channeling, and then 2 damage stats. I would stay away from crit multi because you just don't have enough crit on the weapon. Rings, just need the channeling mod on them again. I have set blow on 1. Try and stack as much damage as you can here because you're going to need it. Gloves, super good. Basically just glancing blow, resists. And then leech is probably ideal here because there's not a ton of other good things for gloves. So we lucked out and got a pretty good pair. The cast speed here is not useful at all, but these were originally being crafted for my sorceress and just happened to turn out really good for my primalist. So there's that. And then Solarium Greaves. Want the dodge here, and that's because you're going to get a very specific dodge belt mod. Dodge would also be really good on the gloves, and it would actually be preferable to the leech, assuming you have the leech in other places. Again, pretty much insane roll here. Armor protection while channeling, mandatory. And then, yeah, fill in your weak res slots or get some additional health, get a little bit of damage. This has leech. You can even get dodge on it. The reason why we're getting dodge and you haven't seen any dodge yet is because you can actually put a mod on the belt or get one that's 710 dodge for 4 seconds on potion use. And if you look at this, we have 0 dodge right now. We have 14 dodge, which is 0%. And we're going to pop a potion, and we're at 52% dodge, even at level 100, which is absolutely bonkers. So yeah, and the thing about this build is that with the way you leech, you don't need persistent dodge all the time. You just need it in those situations where, you're getting destroyed by something like the avians. And, you just pop a potion there and it smooths that damage out like crazy. Also really good if you're stuck in like a poison cloud or if you need to move, you're kind of pinned down. Just pop a potion and then leap slam away. Just super good. Dodge is insane when you can get it at that value. Yeah, like I'm not investing into it in any other way pretty much aside from getting percentage on my boots, and I'd probably get it on these 2 items as well, but it's just super low investment for a ton of mitigation and damage smoothing, so definitely want that. And I think that's pretty much it. And go over the idols. So the idols, you obviously need 1 summon Thorn Totem. Don't get more than that. I like to use leech idols with damage, as you can see here. And another option would be to go cold damage per active totem. It's super strong, honestly. This might be the one reason to go cold, because you can just get so much more damage, because obviously you're going to have 6-7 totems out at all times, so it's like 120% damage per relic. Kind of disgusting. Especially if you can get leech on top of those. It's just gross, right? So those would probably be BIS, but really hard to get, and I wouldn't count on getting those super soon. So we're just going to do a little bit of gameplay, and I'll talk you through how I do a little arena run, and then we'll end the video. This is obviously an early wave, but still the principles apply. So we'll start with this down, and I've also run a version of this with entangling roots, and I'll show that really quick. You would replace the blessing here with entangling roots. Where is it? Right here. And how I would build this is come over here, grab this, max out the duration, come over here, come to the mana regeneration here. You don't need the multiple patches here at all. And then get the damage while standing on the roots and the area of effect. And that's pretty much calling it a day right there. You'll probably be maxed out. So you can also probably put points into Fleeting Grove just to help with the mana efficiency. Even though it reduces the duration a little bit, in my opinion, it's still worth. And roots can be really helpful because they can just stop things in their tracks, obviously. But put down the totem, bless that, and start doing damage. And then wait. Want to refresh. Kill your Spriggan. Get some extra damage. Refresh the totem. Refresh the Spriggan. Pop dodge because we're getting the avians. They actually deal some damage, as you can see. but once you pop the potion for dodge, it just nullifies them completely. Do one more wave here. Again, Totem down. Heal the Spriggan. You have to be careful, see what that was a mistake I just did where right as I was about to get into combat I healed the Spriggan, which obviously incurs like a bit of a GCD. So we were able to get attacked before we were able to get into the channel. And getting into the channel is very important, especially because you're stun immune on the channel, so. Let's clean up this wave and then we'll call it a demonstration. See, it doesn't die in East Bumfuck, stays relatively close to where you were. There come the roots from the Spriggan. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Obviously this is only wave 30, it's not very challenging, but just wanted to give you a brief demonstration of how it plays. I'll probably upload the end of the 254 run maybe tomorrow or something like that. So that's pretty much it. If you have any questions or anything, leave them in the comments. Thanks for watching, and like if you liked it, subscribe if you liked it. If you didn't like it, dislike it, and talk to you guys later.